Could it be possible that no matter where in the world we grow up, our process of moral development is the same? Can moral development really be universal in a world where some cultures hunt while others hack, some societies hang their criminals while others hang their heads in disappointment? According to Lawrence Kohlberg, the answer is yes. Inspired by the early constructivist theories of Jean Piaget, the American developmental psychologist Lawrence Kohlberg wanted to uncover the developmental process associated with moral reasoning. Like Piaget, Kohlberg saw that children and adolescents approach situations differently depending on their developmental stage, and he wanted to unearth the answer in a methodologically robust manner. So he created a standardized interview procedure for moral reasoning, in which participants are presented with a moral dilemma, then asked how they would solve the situation, and finally why they'd made the decision they had. Kohlberg and his colleagues at Harvard would then qualitatively code the participants' justifications to ascertain their level of moral development. Here's an example of a Kolbergian dilemma, known as the case of Heinz. It's got nothing to do with tomato ketchup. I wonder what you'd do to solve this situation. A woman from a small town is seriously ill from a rare type of cancer. She's close to death. But there is one drug that could save her life. It's a special form of radium that a drug maker in the same town has recently discovered. It is very expensive to make, but the scientist is selling it for a large profit, with a 10 times markup. He pays the equivalent of $200 for the radium and then charges $2,000 for a dose of the drug. The sick lady's husband, Heinz, asks everyone he knows to borrow money so that he can pay for this treatment for his wife, but only manages to pull together $1,000, half the asking price. So he asks the drug maker to sell it to him cheaper, or to allow him to pay later. But the druggist says no. I discovered the drug and I'm going to make money from it. So in desperation, Heinz breaks into the man's store to steal the drug for his wife. Should Heinz have done that? And why? You might want to pause the video at this point and scribble down a couple of thoughts before we go through Kohlberg's stages of moral development. Then you can see which level aligns closest with your own thoughts. So, Kohlberg's 1963 study interviewed a large number of boys aged between 10 and 16. Yep, only boys, sign of the times, and a limitation of Kohlberg's methodology. From these interviews, we get 3 broad levels of moral reasoning, each of which Kohlberg subsequently expands into 2 stages in order to elaborate on the progression through the levels. Initially, our morality is of constraint, imposed by the power of authority. We avoid rule breaking, not because we think breaking the rule is bad, but because we don't want to be punished. This develops into self-interest. We follow the rules when it serves our immediate self-interest, and let others do the same. These first 2 stages are known as the pre-conventional level. Heinz shouldn't have stolen the drug because he might have been caught and sent to prison. Kohlberg's second level is of morality of convention. At this level, people have an acceptance that rules and authority contribute to the maintenance of social order. We want to live up to the expectations of people who are close to us because we want to be considered a good person. As we develop to the upper conventional stage, we're guided by a commitment to fulfill duties to which we agreed, motivated by a desire to keep the system going and to prevent social order from breaking down. Perhaps Heinz was wrong to steal the drug, because if everyone stole things they wanted but couldn't afford, then the whole economy would crash. The final 2 stages are combined, known as the post-conventional or principled level. Not everyone reaches this level, and Kohlberg found that so few reach stage 6 that he actually removed it from the model in a later revision. At this post-conventional level, we see morality in terms of wider principles of justice and abstract values. Within this principled level, stage 5 is an awareness that people hold different values, which are generally linked with their group memberships. These relative rules should generally be upheld, with the guiding principle being the desire of the welfare and protection of all, or at least the greatest good for the greatest number. Maybe Heinz was wrong to steal from the druggist, because the profit the druggist makes from selling his successful drugs allows him to research the drugs of the future. The 6th stage, which was subsequently removed as it was found to be so rare, was something Kohlberg called the stage of universal ethical principles. People who reach this stage are morally guided by self-selected ethical principles. At this stage, laws are only valid when they rest on those ethical principles. Perhaps Heinz was justified in stealing the drug because a life is worth more than any amount of cold hard cash. In saving a life, he's done something much more important than obeying a law. Kohlberg's work is hugely influential and inspired a wave of further studies testing his theory. Kolbe et al. Conducted a longitudinal study that followed some of Kohlberg's participants for 20 years, retesting them every 3rd year. This study supports the suggestion that as people get older, they tend to reach higher levels. Worth being aware though that we're only considering early adulthood here and can't use this longitudinal study to comment on moral reasoning in midlife or old age. And what about other cultures? Is this really universal? Well, Kohlberg says that it is. He branched out from his Harvard base to study moral reasoning in Britain, Mexico, Taiwan, Turkey, and other places in America. On his grand tour, he found that the stages did indeed present themselves in the same order wherever he went. The only cultural difference he observed was the speed at which people progressed through the stages, with participants in non-industrialized societies progressing slower than their Western counterparts. It is a Western study though, with possibly Western-centric moral dilemmas, so perhaps that's why. Snary also conducted a meta-analysis of 44 studies across 26 cultures, and also found convincing support for the universality of moral development. Thank you for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you did, give it a thumbs up and share it with a friend. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to Psychology Unlocked and click that bell. That way you won't miss out on any of our upcoming videos. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.